Welcome to Banyen Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyen.com. Since 1970, Banyen Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyen.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy. Today we're speaking with Marti Prechtel. This is the fourth in a series of 4 interviews where Marti and I got to have in-depth, meandering, and delightful conversations about his life and experiences living alongside the beautiful Pueblo Mesta horses, and how we can reawaken our Indigenous soul. As an avid student of Indigenous eloquence, innovative language, and thought, Marti Prechtel is a writer, artist, and teacher who, through his work, both written and spoken, hopes to promote the subtlety, irony, and pre-modern vitality hidden in any living language. I give a full introduction about Marti and his work in the previous 3 episodes, and I'm going to give you those episode numbers in case you want to listen in order. The first one is episode number 59. It's titled Rescuing the Light. The second conversation is episode number 71, titled The Mare and the Mouse. And the third conversation is episode number 112, titled The Wild Rose. This is the 4th installment where we speak about his final book in the Stories of My Horses trilogy, and it's titled The Canyon Wren. I want to let everyone know that Martin has a year-long audio lecture series, which you can subscribe to on his website. Just go to floweringmountain.com/please come sit by my fire. floweringmountain.com/please come sit by my fire. I'm delighted and excited to present to you this final conversation in this series, and I really hope that it's not the last time Marti and I get to speak. Please enjoy.
Cool.
Are you there?
Yeah, well, I don't know, mostly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow, man. It's so good to hear your voice again, Marti.
This is fun. Oh, yeah. Good to hear your voice too, man. How you been?
Been good. I've been good. Yeah. Getting some nice spring weather here. Lots of rain and some nice sun that's warming things up a bit too.
Yeah. Well, we had a winter. It was good for New Mexico.
Nice.
Yeah. Snow, rain, hail, rain, snow, flood, rain. And then a lot of wind and then more rain. And then here we are. Yeah.
Wow. So I was well, obviously I read The Canyon Wren. I actually just finished it this morning. You had me crying a fair bit. I won't do any spoilers for the audience who should read this trilogy, but wow. And I listened back to actually all 3 of our past interviews over the last week to just get my mind around kind of what we've talked about and where we left off.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know how much it helped, but let's see. So yeah, I maybe do you want how would you normally start? Would you start something with a prayer, Marti? How would you normally start something?
It depends on what the something is.
Well, I guess something like this.
Well, anyway, it's good to see you again, or hear from you, or Ross Mikichi. And yeah, make prayer. Well, I pray in lots of languages. So I'm not, the thing about praying, it's so weird because Christians, they pray to God and they pray for themselves. But natives don't pray for themselves. They pray to feed whatever they're praying to. So their prayers are not so much asking, although there are people that do that. It's in order to make whatever it is or whoever it is, them guys and them girls and those beings healthy and well, because the prayers are already being made for us by all the natural world, and then that's what's keeping us going, and that's what makes us what we are, because our bodies are all part of that. So when we pray, it's not exactly to consecrate our efforts, but it's to consecrate the efforts of the holy. So I just want to clarify that when I'm praying. Maybe nobody knows what I'm saying, but it's not a content that's designed for the human beings to consume, but for the human beings to create something beautiful for the holy nature to consume. So Kiti kiti shell have the quel shell shahawa kohilana nene na mi ala vliqual at nuna chahana Martin Prechtel ravio caliente no Mexico hiuta a anigara okpina krukin hak keshbil abraham ras mikichi atsako ha British Columbia Canada katko osho her hana kanatawlehi kamekera oshi har ha buchar ha shitsibananen عشان كرا كبنومها شوكتسي هنا أكرا أني شوكتسي هنا أكرا نيم بريمير شكاك نتاش ركاب هبرا كميك كرا كانيون رين روش ميخ عشان كو هو ها نكن كبان هو كميك مات لوف لوت هانكو كوتو مهات أخوخ كبان نيمشكا بس روتشليبر ها باتسا كو ها كميك poch her chohan kiban poch chohan kiban chochlal kiban have you not ha kon hilan ki on kama ka hawal bas kama ho kame kama hata han ko ho itseln kaban en ko shutu ha utsi bas harma kame kin kimo ho kin ya chwa lamla anne wa ala lamla anne wa kana mi ala li kolabra itbalana taribi ni tali wa chavra ni kamna بياخ استكنا ما قوختي هاشخ بوب إيموش بقبل كات كان كميل كه أنا توت بتبال نبان كارت سيخنا أخرى شكرها شين هيو شين تا شين سوت شين مويف شين روتشليف نتقا باش كين كموها أنن وتسيلن كها كان شين نبيال ركاب آل هاش خايل أنن إن كهلال هان تكبيل نتكب أن كهلال ها ملاخا الريحات سهرها كتقون وابيا هي رهاتك نتشال بيبك إنقا كشكونشكيش كواش كواش شيب كوش كمشوش كويكنا كي لابوت لا بيكلا نملا تقاس لما هون لو لوش الخول ما تيوشيل. For those of you who would like to repeat a couple of words, I'm not a tele-evangelist, but this is Kiil, Utsil, Utslach Bey, Utslach Kalo, Nimelach Tak, Kaslimal Mahon Lo Oshilhus Matiushil, which translates roughly to this is what you're saying: long life, all honey sweetness in the heart, no misfortunes and sickness, and 13 gratitudes multiplied times 400. That's the way to say amen in Mayan. That's actually, that is liturgical, but okay. Anyway, yeah, hi.
Wow. Thank you. So that's Mayan you were speaking.
Tutuhil, man. There's lots of kinds of Mayan, as you probably know. In Guatemala alone, there's 31 different varieties. People like to say dialects, but there's actually 5 major language groups, and within them, there's over 1,700 different dialectics. And Tutuhil is just one of those. It's actually one of the smaller ones because there's only probably, I don't know now, it's a big population, but maybe 50,000 people speak it. Whereas like Quiche, which is a bigger bunch of people, I think there's probably 3 million. And then Cachiquel is probably 1 million. And Mom is probably 800,000 and so on and so forth. And then there's some very small groups. And then there's, of course, a lot of extinct groups, like basically Chol and Chorti, maybe a little few speakers. But anyway, and then of course there are Mayan speakers in Mexico, and there's many, many more, Chambulenses and all of the people from Acalang and Yucatecans. And most people, when they think of Mayans, they always think of Yucatan or Chetumal or something like that, because the tourist bureau, they land in Isla de las Mujeres or something, and that's what they see. But there's most of the Mayan people today, I live in Guatemala. In Guatemala, when I used to live there, it was mostly Mayan speaking, and Spanish was used in the government and in the schools. But the greater population spoke their own village dialects. And most natives, most Indians, they spoke at least 5 different of those dialects in order to get around, plus Spanish. So it was basically a native country, The thing is that the Spaniards, when they came to the world of, what they called the New World, pretty old for the rest of us, but they, unlike the English, who really eradicated all language and all the people they could, and all the grizzly bears and all the animals, and turned it back into, York, and so there weren't any trees. And the Spaniards didn't do that, even though they were, pretty rough, and it was pretty much a feudal economy that they put into motion. They actually adopted the native tongue as the governments of the languages. Like, for instance, in Peru, Quechua became the language that their government operated. In Guatemala, they used Cachiquel. And pretty much in Cachiquel, pretty much all Mayan people can more or less understand it, even to this day, including myself. So, and that was pretty amazing. So for that reason, you still have languages and people in those places where the Europeans were Spanish speaking that invaded. Whereas the ones from other places, which we won't say a whole lot about, they didn't do a very good job with that. Matter of fact, they did a really good job getting rid of it. So that's why I'm living in New Mexico. We've got many languages here too. I grew up speaking another language, Caris, and there's a lot of Tene and Tiwas and Towas and Tewas and, Zunis and Hopichutu and all kinds. So that what I was speaking was Tutuhil, and it's not like Tutuhil that you hear in the road, in the street. It's the Tutuhil that is used in prayer form. So enough of that. Why I talk so much? You want to talk about this book, and I'm talking about me.
No, I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
The street corner old dude, man. I'm in the corner, I start talking, man.
One of the things I notice about these old languages is, like, even when I don't understand what's being said, it affects me, like, in a different way. Like it makes me feel emotional hearing it,
Why do you think that is, Ross?
It's something in my DNA. It's something in your soul that it's speaking to.
Yeah. And maybe there's something in your soul that's talking and wants to speak it too. Because so much modern world is just based on, what do I get? How can I get something out of it? What does this give me? What does this show give me? But I think most people, they really want to give gifts, They really want to be a gift giver. And all people of the world have some ancient linguistic capacity. And it's just been the colonial mentality of the last 3,000 years, or really intensely for the last 1,200 years, that has made everything into a business language of getting or taking or eradicating or clearing the field. So the actual speech between people, let me tell you, the Tutuhu people, when they speak to each other in village, at least when I used to live there, it's so, incredibly poetic. The smallest 4-year-old child speaks like, Dante. It's unbelievable what they're saying. And the same where I grew up. It's a totally different language, not even related, and maybe 2 words possibly related. But it's just an amazing thing that has been lost in modern people. So I think there's a great longing inside the human soul for genuine speech, because there's only 2 things we got that nature has less of, and one is our human capacity for speech and the creative ability with words, and what we can do with our thumbs and our fingers. And that's why everything we have comes from nature. And so we have to give something back with what we can make with our hands and what we can speak with our souls, man. So I think that's probably why you feel that, you know. That's how I was when I was little, you know. I go everywhere. And I just love the sound of language. Even the imperialists, you know, in their language, I listen to it. So, wow, that's really strange. But I would just get my mouth around those sounds, and it was just so delicious, you know, to hear Bantu tongues or, you know, Mandinka or Mandingo or Spanish as spoken by people in these countries. So what you have is when you have all these imperial languages, these colonial guys, you know, jamming language down your throat in the boarding schools and all that, then what happens is a lot of places that people sort of nativize the English, they nativize the Spanish, you know, they nativize the French. And you go to Senegal and listen to the French. I mean, man, that is delicious talk, man. You know, it's not like Paris, man. It's totally like, whoa, okay. And you can sing in it, you know. And in the same, anybody that takes anybody over, all of a sudden the local are speaking their own patois, but it's always put down as being a pidgin or being some sort of, you know, substandard type of language. But I think that's where all language really actually comes from. And English, for sure, descends from that 100%. But the inferiority complex that the Anglo-speaking public has for itself just is so amazingly prejudiced against all these other things. So when you feel it inside your soul, that's something besides the colonial, you know, wanting to bust loose like a little seed going to stick his head out. Do I dare? Do I dare? Do I dare? You know? So, yeah. And it won't hurt any of you who are listening to start speaking a language that's not related to anything you know, you know. That's one of my things with my school. That's the first thing you got to do. That's why about half people quit. You know, I don't want to speak it. I already speak this, that, and the other. I just said, well, try something new. Like me, I always working on Comanche and Mongol, you know, Tene, all these different languages, not just native languages, but languages like Basque. You know, I mean, I just love the sound, man. It's like eating dinner, you know, speaking those languages. You know? Yeah.
Do you find that speaking different languages gets you seeing things in different ways too?
Yeah. Yeah, just say yes, man. I mean, it's like playing music and singing. You see, all language originally, there's no such thing as language that was spoken. I mean, all this thing about, you know, spoken language is the same thing as written language. It comes from a similar part of the brain. Writing and drawing come from one place, but painting and singing come from somewhere else. So I think initially most languages, at least in the Pleistocene era, and a lot of places until recently, is very much sung. So when you sing, your brain, you know, goes across the corpus callosum, and man, it just starts vibing in, you know, in an alternating current that opens up so much. You don't need no drugs, man. The speech is this incredible depth of understanding of the world, and also your participation and responsibility to respond to it that way. So, yeah, definitely opens, but it also makes it so you can get your handle on something that can happen. Like, for instance, in Mayan understand, Tutuhil, at least the old traditionalists. Now we got, you know, iPhones, everything's kind of gone to hell. But in the old days, young people even thought and felt, and I do still, is that the world is being spoken into life by what is holy. In other words, the word for grass growing is shinbiru bi hakem. You know, that means, oh, the grass is saying his name. You know, and when the cornfield starts to sprout, they say, shahrichat sharubi. Oh, the seeds are starting to sing. And so when the sun comes up in the morning, they say, shar kalta. Our Father has sprouted, he's singing. So everything that is sung and spoken is actually saying its nature. And by saying its nature makes its nature happen. The wind blows, the grass grows, the trees are growing, the birds are flying. Everything is happening according to its nature. And so something having a nature is its language ability. So everything is opened up by speaking in another way. If you actually learn to speak something besides, you know, business patois, you know, buy this, sell that, buy this, sell that, you start to learn actually what the people are saying and learn to tell a joke and sing a song in their language, then really peace might actually break out. I don't know. I mean, I always hope that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago the sort of inferiority complex behind sort of the I don't know, the Protestant modern industrial kind of culture.
Yeah.
Is that what drives the arrogance, do you think?
Oh, drives the arrogance. Well, people are perfectly capable of being arrogant. I mean, without being colonial. But some cultures understand that arrogance as being something you got to go through when you're 14 or 15, and they just put you in a little bubble of, people that are not your family, and you go through initiation and you say lots of outlandish things, but you don't make them into national policy, you know. They're there and they have to be said and they have to be expressed because you're a human, Failing is not a problem. What is the problem is when that all becomes policy and then it's hip and you get a big wage for being that way. So I don't think colonialism. Well, yeah, okay. I'm writing a book on it right now. When I get it done, I'll send you a copy. But it's the thing is, do you have a possibility of being a human being still in a time when you feel so much shame about yourself? In other words, I always came up. You remember back in the World War II? You don't remember back in World War II, neither do I. But
I've heard a
yeah, you
bit.
heard about it, yeah. And the Nazis had a corps that was called the SS, and this was the secret police and the terrible guys, and we have them here and everywhere has them. And I always thought that what happens with so-called white people, and there's nothing white about them at all, and it doesn't even exist as a race, is that their self-designation as Anglos or whites comes from just the feeling of being very, very small and very insignificant. And so they become the SS because on one side they feel shame and then they become superior. And so anybody who feels a lot of shame about, not being adequate to speaking the language or doing this or having that gorgeous, indigenous open eye clothing and everything going down the road and speaking with one another calm, then all of a sudden feel ashamed, and then all of a sudden has to be superior and has to suppress that thing that it doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand or feels that itself is not as much as that. And so then the one way to make yourself feel important is to make yourself feel big. But bigness doesn't mean important. But if you make yourself feel big by making everybody else feel small or make them actually squash so that they don't even exist, then that becomes what I call the syndrome of shame and superiority. And so you don't get anywhere by telling a madman he's crazy, and you don't get anywhere by telling a person who's got SS, as I call it, that they've got SS, because they get more ashamed and they become more superior, and then they start pushing you around, and then it becomes a policy. So it's a difficult situation. So all I do is, I said, make beauty, speak languages, and maybe slowly that ancient thing inside you that is not ashamed of being itself, that is not a thing that realizes that it was not the colonial impetus itself, but it was imposed upon it. Because the worst thing that people never really realize is that whatever pushed them around in the past, 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago or 50 years ago, they will become, unless they're really spiritually awake. You will end up promoting exactly what screwed you up if you don't realize it. And so this is really, really a crafty situation. So a guy like me, I look maybe like a buffoon to some people, or small or kind of funny, but actually I'm working very hard at a very core thing. And I do it in all different kinds of ways and different kinds of angles, and maybe different people will find a way there too. So yeah, anytime you say to an Anglo that they have an inferiority complex, all of a sudden they feel inferior and they feel ashamed, and then all of a sudden here comes the arrogance, as you call it. But I don't call it arrogance as much as I call it superiority, because it's superiority. What is superiority? Well, who's superior? Humans are not superior. They're wonderful, but they're not a superior being. I don't have that measurement. So the 1 to 10 thing don't exist for Indians. Yeah. Sorry, I'm preaching here like Jesse Jack.
No, it's great. I mean, these are important conversations, and I know at Bullad's Kitchen at your school there, it's a big part of the conversation you have, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I have an online audio lecture series now, and I'm really giving people a lot of hard time there. So you can check that one out too, because
Yeah.
the next Bullet's Kitchen that I'm doing, I'm taking my recruits from the people that signed up for that and stuck with it for a year, so that they don't have to sit through so much with me, because I mean, as you can tell, I can talk, and people come out of there looking like they need stretchers, and I feel bad. Did I do that? I didn't mean to do
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, you're really undoing people's conditioning in a big way with when you speak, and it's probably difficult to digest for a lot of people.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, you can't expect I mean, I do because I love it, and I love them, and I don't want them to feel cheated. I give them everything I possibly can, but the old Zen thing. I mean, how much tea can you put in a cup, man? You just got to drink it first and absorb it, and slowly, and a little bit at a time. So I'm doing it this way now. Try different ways, different times. But
Do you have people that like students who apprentice with you? Is that a thing that you do where they'll for
no, I don't do any apprentice because, well, imagine you've looked at the internet and seen all the insane things people have done with my name and what they think I'm saying, and started all of these, enormous circles and movements and crazy things that we actually don't condone.
I actually haven't seen that.
Well, thank God, don't look. But as a result, someone to apprentice to me. I mean, that would be wonderful if I could find the hardy soul that could stick it out. I probably would do it, but I haven't found yet.
Yeah,
But I
it's
do
hard.
want to teach as much as possible as I can.
Yeah. Well, just for our audience, I've got the website for people to look into your online audio program. I think it is right.
Yeah,
It's floweringmountain.com/please come sit by my fire.
yeah.
Floweringmountain.com/please come sit by my fire.
Yeah. That's an old Mayan saying. But it's a saying in a lot of languages, like especially in Navajo and Tadené. There's a word called alajiko. Alajiko means there are always forever fire that's in the middle of the hogan. And then that actually means that everybody's coming and going. It doesn't make sense in English, but it means that there's always people welcome to come. And that used to be always the village kind of news system and places where you heard everything and knew everything. So it goes at the end of every prayer that we make, please come sit by my fire. So everybody come on in, sit by fire. Because a fire for us is not warmth, it's where we eat. We cook on the fire. It's in the house. It's right in the house. It's not out in the bush or anything. So
Yeah. Martine, this 3-volume series, which is, I have to say, and I don't say this lightly, I think it's safe to say you're my favorite author.
No, don't be like that now. Just let's get
Don't pick favorites. And I say that with in a real way. Like I really, really love reading your books.
Wow, I really like that you like reading my books.
Yeah.
What do you like about them? I've got so many kinds of books out there. It's just like,
Yeah, well, I'll say like this trilogy, the stories of my horses. What I like is, and we talked about this in one of our other interviews, is the way you write. And you obviously you punctuate, but you punctuate in a different way. You've kind of
from my
you kind of
editor.
created your own style, and like you said, you want it to be written in a way that could be read out loud by the
Yes,
fire.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so there's a certain stream of consciousness that I find like the pages just turn and turn and turn. It's easy to engage.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
And
Makes my
and
heart
then
feel
not to
good.
mention what you're saying.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, which to me is probably I can't think of a more important body of learning and unlearning than what you're putting out there at this place and time that we find ourselves in. So
I'm glad to hear that in my heart because I just plow along. When you're writing, you don't really see the people, and when we're talking on someplace, we don't really see. We just pray and have faith. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that. Yeah. But I think English has always been the enemy language. And at some point, probably about 30 years ago, I decided that I was going to convert English to its own sad origins. And that English comes from a very noble bunch of people a long time ago who didn't have writing and had incredible ways of speaking as well. And that maybe to let English say something that it doesn't, it's not supposed to say, and allow it to be like a horse that carries something grand again. And so I decided to write. I mean, when I first started writing, I was with Putnam, and they were, you can read Melville's, assessment of Putnam, but not to hear me. I'm not saying anything bad on the air, but they actually sent me a ghostwriter because they didn't want this, kind of writing. And they said, no, you don't know how to write, and you're not really speaking English. And let me send you somebody who just writes it down. I said, no, I'll tell you, let's not do that. I'm going to write my own book, and that's that. And so the whole idea was that writing as a whole would be an art form in and of itself. It's not just about writing something down, or for a screenplay or for a movie, but so that the ancient wordology of human beings, where they hear and they also are making the book or whatever it is you're speaking live again. I mean, authors are nothing without readers, and stories are nothing without people to hear them. And it's the people that put the stories together, and our imaginations and our ability with languages have been so stultified by all the action stuff and everything just beating each other up. You need a jolt, to just play a music, you have to have a video that goes, But instead of your own wordology starting to form and reionize inside you, so the whole thing is thundering inside you, and you're thundering together with the rest of the people. Whether I succeeded at that or not is a matter of opinion, I suppose. But that's what I was always aiming toward. And to hear you say that, that's really, really great. Really great.
I'm very grateful for the effort you put into it, and it's really benefiting me, and I'm sure many people. Can I ask, at the end of the Canyon Wren, you indicate maybe there's another one coming out after. Is that true?
Yeah, it's such a sad situation when traditionally when you tell a story, a legend, an epic, a mythology with any sort of natural people that I grew up with, whether it was with Karis people or Tewa people or Adene, which are Navajo people, or Tsutujil people or Mam people, or any of these different people, and in Africa too. When they're done with when the story comes to an end, it's understood that there's no end, because it's bad luck to end a story because life goes on. That's why it says that at the end of the book. And if you just cut it off and say, well, there you have it, it's encapsulated, that's the article, go to the journal, blah, 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 blah. Everybody gets really nervous, so they almost always leave before they hear the end of the story because they don't want to hear the end. Mm-hmm. And so whenever you end a story, you always say some crazy kind of what you might say charm or liturgy at the end. And where I grew up, the storytellers would always end the story with, and when I was a little kid, I said, I don't know why they said that, but it isn't part of the story. They always say stuff like, oh, all my yucca fruits are piled up and my tail feathers are bald. That would be the end of the night. And they were like, okay, your tail feathers are bald. I wonder what the hell he's talking about. And of course, what that refers to is the really ancient nature of macaws and parrots, which the people that grew up with brought from Mexico on foot, and some of them were older than anybody alive. Matter of fact, I saw a picture taken of one in 1880s, and it was still alive when I was a little kid, because they're always yelling, but the people pull their feathers out, to use for all the ceremonies, and then they rub them with all these different medicines and stuff, and they grow new ones. And so when you say, all my tail feathers are bald, in other words, we've used all my feathers for tonight, but they're still growing more, And so I've always put that as a disclaimer at the end of any real story of mine, because the stories in those books are not made up. That's what's happened, that there's more to be told, and thank God, and hopefully it will. It's a sad story is that Punk, he died right after this book was published.
Oh no.
Yeah, I had to shoot him. He was 40, and he
Oh.
couldn't get up, and he tried so hard to get. It was 3 years. He would go down in the fall, and then I would do all my medicine with him, and he would stand up and live another year. And this year he couldn't do it, and I finally had to shoot him. It was really hard for me. But then his son Yampa, he ran out of the corral 2 months ago, ran all over the land to all the places in a clockwise fashion, went to go see his favorite mares and bred one of them, ran up to the top, up where the entrance is here, and hid. And it took him a long time to find him. And then I found him. He was just standing. And I said, "What's going on, Yampa?" And he fell dead. I held him in his head. He would have crushed me when he fell. And he just fell dead as a doornail. And it was like, he said, this epoch is over. This is over. All the babies I've made and all the babies my dad made, Punk was his father, and they died. And what was really strange is that at the end of the Canyon Run, there were 2 stories about Punk and Yampa I was going to include, and I didn't want to because I just knew if I did, they would die. And I didn't put them in. And I was going to put them in the next book. And here they are. They pass away, man.
Oh.
And Yampa, I put him up for all the eagles and the bears. And Punk, I buried him like a Scythian lord, But I still sad for them. But I loved them. They're so noble. And there was no way in hell they were going to let the story end in some sort of phlegmatic, modern way. They're totally heroic to the end. So that's one of the reasons we put those things at the end of the book. But yeah, sure, of course there's another book. What the hell, as long as we can make it on this earth, they die so I can live. And that's a real thing, It's not just some noise or some movie. It's the real thing. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sending love to you and everyone who loved Punk and Yampa. And
mind you, I have 3 of Punk's grandsons. I have 3 stallions still here with Yampa's kids. They're gorgeous, gorgeous little beautiful studs. So it's not, the line's not gone. It's just, I love Yampa so much. He was so close to me.
Yeah. Can you, I've read the book, so I have a bit of an idea, but for our listeners, I guess it's kind of 2 questions. One is, can you try and define, it's a big question, what indigenous horse medicine is, or what that means? and then
there's so many Indians and natives. I mean, that would be a long story, man.
Yeah. I guess the other part is just for people to understand what it means to you to really live alongside or live with these horses, what that relationship is, the love that's there. I know it's a hard question, but
no, it's not a hard question. I'm not sure how much patience your listeners have, to listen to all the things I might say. Let me maybe begin by saying that everyone is taught, at least in this country, they're taught in the very bad history classes that they have, that the horses were brought here by Europeans, and natives didn't have them, and that natives got them, and then they became dangerous people, and then they had to be killed and put on reservations. My dad was a paleontologist, okay, and his forte, his main field of study was ancient mammals, and he had a lot to do with horses. And all of the early horses that started to evolved in what is now the Americas. They didn't evolve in Asia, and they didn't evolve in Europe. They evolved here. And they disappeared here approximately 20,000 years ago due to, they think, to basically some cognate of a sleeping sickness or bug, but they don't know that for sure. And by then, most of these animals, mastodons and woolly rhinos and all these had immigrated into Asia, and then they're into Europe, where they met up with other kinds of, hairy quadrupeds and all over the world. Like Africa had no horses, Arabia didn't have any horses. Those were all brought in later by people. I mean, Africa had a lot of asses and donkeys, and zebras and all that. And so did Europe, actually. There were zebras in Spain, to be honest. But when the horse, as we know it, came back to the Americas, when it came into this area, it wasn't just any horse that came here. It wasn't the horse that ended up in Northern Europe or the ponies that are, so beautiful. They're in the, Scandinavian area, or the Germans, or any sort of draft horses or any Arabian horses. They were a horse that came in through North Africa into Spain, and then were brought here, as conveyances for either conquistadores, but there are not really any horses conquistadores that were left. I mean, but the colonial horses. But the big horse that was brought in was mostly a small, kind of what they call barb horse. It has a shorter back, It's a totally different build. People today, they just look at horses and just the regular breeds with all the, the big imperial people who own all the horses, all the thoroughbreds and the, Arabians and the Turkaners and the Hanoverians and all this, that, and the other. And this little horse was very, very small, kind of the same size as a Mongol horse, but a totally different thing. And when it hit the land, I mean, it was just like it came home. It was like, boom, they were everywhere. It was like, yeah, all right, man. Because Palo Duro Canyon in Texas is where most of the remains of the really early, Eocene horses, Miocene horses. And when they just hit, I mean, the terrain, it was just like, this was made for them. So we've just been letting the grass grow for 20,000 years and we're back. And so when native people got the horses, they didn't get horses because they wanted them, because anybody wanted them. They were illegal for them. And the English didn't allow Indians to ride horses. And the Spaniards, it was illegal for anyone to ride a horse if you're native. So they ended up, all these Indians ended up herding horses for these Europeans and what they called the studs or the mestas. And when, all the rebellions broke out, natives became better riders than their masters. And the horses, they got land raised. I mean, it's very much like people themselves, that all of a sudden the horses now living with these people in a certain way and doing things a certain different way than they did in Europe. And they actually changed physiognomy. And I mean, there's an actual Spanish chronicle that was written in 1500s about the horses that they were bringing up through what is now Chihuahua and Sonora with Coronado, and how their big problem was getting horseshoes on them so they could take the terrain. And then not 100 years later, there's no way to nail a horseshoe on the horse's feet because they had become so inured to the terrain that they can't be. I don't shoe any of my horses, man. Our terrains are rough. So they just all of a sudden became from here. And any native will tell you that these horses are from here. So the animal is not like something we look at. It's not like something we ride as a conveyance or we get pleasure out of. It's like hard to explain. It's like your right foot. It's like your arm. It's like your belly, like your heart. It's like, I mean, I can't even explain it. It's like Louis Armstrong said about the blues or jazz. He said, if you have to ask, man, there ain't no way you're going to get it, but it's just such a deep thing for the people that had that. And that's why the first thing the American government did when it had a chance was eradicate all the herds, eradicate everybody's horses and put in Northern European stud of draft horses and riding horses. Because the independence and the freedom and just the way of life that was and was still alive when I was a little kid in the Pueblos. No, most people don't think of Pueblo Indians as horse riders, but they're tremendous horse riders, at least where I grew up. And so this destruction of the animal was just nationwide. And that was especially bad in World War I, where they were using to feed the soldiers. Most of the soldiers didn't eat beef; they were eating horse meat, and that were just called off all the wild herds that were out here mostly in the American West, in the Southwest especially. So by the 1950s, they could only find about 2,000 of these horses left, and about 80 of them were on the reservation where I grew up. And we didn't know that those weren't just horses. As far as we're concerned, that's the only kind of horse there was. And they slowly disappeared. And so when I came back from Guatemala, I said, I'm going to get me a horse. I just need a horse. And I couldn't find one. And so that's what these books I was written about what that took to go find them again. And there were people trying to preserve them, but it was mostly for different motives than my own, which I won't go into. But the deliciousness of being inside the horse, on the horse, with the horse, it's just a total different thing. And it's dependent how you are with them. In other words, if you treat a horse like he's on TV and like he's 15 feet away from you, even though he's right in front of your face, it's like people treat each other, the horse ends up being that. Whatever you treat like, that's what he ends up being like. If you're mean, he gets mean. If you're scared, he gets scared. Whatever movie you're running in your head, he's got that movie running in his head. And so they're the most incredible biofeedback. And a lot of people, all horses are beautiful, and we know that, and that's great, but this particular horse type, I really don't want to call it a breed, because as soon as you turn into a breed, then they destroy it once again, because it has to be this and it has to be that. And then they got it all compartmentalized. But the old man, Juan Pancho, who taught me so much. I mean, he taught me everything. I mean, God knows, he healed me. I was smashed my leg. I couldn't walk. He fixed him right up. He was a horse trainer. I mean, he caught wild horses, before either of my grandfathers were born, and sold them in Santa Fe for $5 a piece. I thought he was making a killing, and he just knew all the little herbal medicines and how to push this and what not to do with that. And how you pick this plant in the summer where the horses are grazing and dry it and keep it in this solution. So in this winter, when they start to look like really sad and somehow longing for something, you put that in their nostrils and their health perks right up, and how to use this grease and that grease and put this and put that, and not to ever cut the whiskers, and, just all these little things and why. And so I put a certain amount of that in this book, because that was not because it's technique, but because it's an orientation toward life, not just horses. So I think probably, and horses in our blood, especially Indo-European people who forgot that they came in as nomads on horseback from Asia, and not just as warring, scum-sucking, knuckle-dragging, grunting people, but as a very, very, very sophisticated Proto-Scythian type of people. And so I've been making a case for that. I want to make a bigger case for that in the new book I'm writing. But with the horses, I wrote about them because I didn't ever want. Will Rogers says, man, guys that write books, you got to be really suspicious, because the guys that know what they're talking about are usually busy doing it. And people who write books don't know anything. So I wrote books. I do know whatever I wrote in here, and it's mostly about all the bad turns I took. If you didn't notice, all the fucking with mailboxes. And, okay, did I go down there? Oh, I'm being chased by donkeys. Okay, and so on and so forth. So I got fighting a horse with a tractor and all that, and that's because it's what happened, and that's what kept me alive. Because otherwise, you become morose, isolated, sitting around thinking that what you think is important instead of you having to jump to, So yeah, sorry. But Indian medicine, native medicine is not based on the horse. It's based on where they live. Have you ever heard the story of the origin of horses with Navajo people? It's really,
I don't think so.
Really incredible. It happened about 60 miles from here. There's a special mountain. There's no people there. Not even Navajos living there now. But inside the ground, there's supposed to be buried certain, very sacred things. But the first horse that a human ever saw was actually a kind of grass. And then the second one they saw was a pile of manure. And the next one they saw was a wind. And the fourth one they saw was a little piece of mouse fur. And as they got closer and closer, it kept eluding them. And as they ended up walking and walking, they ended up living with the sun. And the sun showed them that horses are made out of grass, and that they put the manure to make the grass grow, and that their fur comes from this, and their lips are made of shell, and that and all these things came together to make as a gift to the human being. And if they would behave themselves, they would give the gift to the human being. And as it stands, it's very interesting, because that very horse is the same horse that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. But all the other horses disappeared. and they said it would disappear if they didn't behave themselves. So the people became imperialist and used horses for killing one another and doing all kinds of nefarious, weird stuff. So here we are. So I just wrote these books. I mean, it's kind of out of character. Everybody said, "Hey, I thought you wrote about Mayans and about grief, and what is this about horses? This is really left field, you know." And I thought, well, it is and it ain't, man. You know, and it's just another side of the picture, you know.
Yeah.
Another part of the village, man, from the north, you know.
Can I share a short quote, Martine, that kind of ties into what we're talking about here?
Sure.
This is from chapter 9, which is, I love the chapter titles: 8-legged horses, square pumpkins, chili feathers, and the color of stones.
It's in Kenyan, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
By the way,
And
you know, it got an award last Friday.
Really?
Yeah, what did they call it? Independent Publishers Book Award.
Hey, congratulations.
And so did the Wild Rose. It got it last year too. I don't know how I said that. I wanted the gold, but you know, the Empire's never going to give me the gold. They give a coffee table book's going when the guy spend the most money on pictures. But somebody loved it, so yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised. It certainly deserves plenty of awards.
I've never won an award. I've been slapping the Empire in the face for 40 years, man. They're not going to give me no award. The guys it's not going to happen, man. You know, they're going to give Geronimo an award for being Geronimo. You know, it's like, yeah. So I thought, well, maybe things are looking up. I don't know. I was sort of suspicious myself, but that's okay.
Maybe they think it'll get them votes. I don't know.
I don't know, man. Oh yeah, I never thought of that.
You know, so here's this quote. There, this ties into what we were saying. It's when horses and people truly belong to a place and are indigenous to the land, they take on the colors, textures, changing expressions, and physical appearance of that place. Genetic function doesn't fight any of this, but actually works to make it happen. This is like really a key theme that I've gleaned from your work, that no matter our ancestral origins in terms of geographic location, the history of our people, we can become indigenous right where we are by belonging to that place. Is that so?
Well, I don't know as we could be, you know, the use of the word indigenous now has been co-opted by a lot of groups, and it does no longer mean what I mean when I say indigenous. So we have to be careful with that word because somebody might get the wrong idea of what we're saying here, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't think we become indigenous to a place. We become what that part of us that is capable of it gets indigified and is then from that place. And the part of us that is not from that place always fights it. And I think that the point that you're making is a much more basic point, which is very, very true, is that the land is the one that calls the shots. In other words, if you're in the city, I remember Mongols, right, for instance, when they started settling them in the communist era to get them out of their nomad camps, they would move them to a city. And they would always bring their yurts, their ere, and put them in, knock all the walls on the inside of the apartment out and put the yurt up in the inside. And so whenever they were in the inside of the yurt, they were on the steppe. They were in the wild mountains because as far as they were concerned, what was outside was still there for them. When they walked out on the street, they walked into this dismal Russian town. And people are surrounded by, if they let the land seep into them, if they let the birds seep into them and the water seep into them and the language, which is where all the language comes from anyway, the original indigenous languages, if they let that seep into them, they don't just spuriously one afternoon become a bunch of Indians. No, not at all. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that we become indigified, that we get land raised. And I mean, you see that with horses so quickly. I mean, there's a chapter in there called The Wild Rose and the other book that talks about, this thoroughbred that I couldn't tell apart from the rest of the horses after 1 year, because she just became that, because she's surrounded by it. So it's
sorry, Martine, maybe I'll get you to pause for a sec. I think
I don't know where this is coming from. I'm in jail. I don't know anything about this place. No, this lady's been trying to sign up for my audio thing, and she can't figure out how to work the knobs either. So,
Yeah, the joys of technology.
man, don't look at me. I don't know. I know how to make rock and roll, man. I can do that.
Yeah. One of the things I regret greatly in my life is getting good at using technology, and now I have to help other people with it.
That's all right. It's not your fault. Not the technology's fault either. It didn't necessarily want to be, they're all slaves, man. It's the same technology as slavery. And they just got all of this collodium and superconductor got corralled into being something it didn't ask to be, and not with no permission asked whatsoever. And you're just helping them to do his thing. No, it's not the technology, man. It's the mentality that comes with the idea of being able to manipulate and rip off nature. No. I'm using it, I mean, minimally, but I am, because, you got to. But now you're nothing wrong with that. Where were we anyway? We was talking about something.
Yeah, we were talking about how you left off talking about how it's really obvious in horses how they become the land or the place they're in.
Well, the people then become the land too that can be with those horses. But if I show you the colors of these horses if somebody's from the city, they don't see the colors. They just see this one is red and they see this one's brown. They see this one's gray and they don't see like the 17,000 different permutations. In Mongol language, they have 240 color designations of horses. England has 7. And they don't allow any of the ones that don't conform to the 7 into the registries, right? They're like, oh no, these are the bad horses. These are the horses, they're low class,
Mm-hmm.
So it's the land and it's the people on the land. And so the horses have to take on the land. And the way of life that you live on the land with the horses makes the horses what they are and makes the people what they are with the horses. And I was trying to get that across in all these books, I guess.
Yeah. We were just talking about technology, and I actually have a quote right here offhand from the book that I wanted to touch on. It's a short one. It says, "Science should always open minds, not restrict them.
Right.
Technology is useful only insofar as it can serve to make humans a more welcome guest at nature's already impeccably beautiful and ever-changing feast, instead of using partial science to ruin nature's gift."
Yeah, and human culture too. Yeah, I was a pretty good writer in those days. That's a good thing. Yeah, yeah, and that's the truth. Well, science is just a way of measuring. I mean, it's not really the technology applied. I mean, using science to make technology has various things. I mean, we're always trying to cure the last crap that we made with new technology. Although, well, if we do this, then the plastics won't do that to the ocean. But we want the ocean so we can surf instead of like just this big old spiritual thing. So the main situation is that any problems that we have are spiritual problems. They're not technological problems. And if technology can help to keep the spiritual approach, then that's good. But science itself is an innocent art form. It's basically there to measure what things are if it's used in an honest way, instead of only being funded in order to get a result that makes money for some technology, which is a totally different thing than science. I mean, I love science, man, because it keeps discovering, how many nerve endings, a certain kinds of shrimp and how many eyes colors the shrimp see 14 colors more than we do. And they can see in the inside of shells, and and the catfish has a taste sensation on its skin like we have on our tongue. And I said, hey man, all right, it's all these things are marvelous. There's nothing wrong with science. What's wrong and what's bad in the way is that when people keep trying to outstrip their obligation to being alive and small in the arms of nature's embrace, and then they end up destroying themselves. And so you can watch what's going on around us pretty well. But you ride a horse real fast, you probably fall off at some point, probably get back on. But for those moments you're going, I mean, whoa, forget it, man. It's so great, so amazing. These little
Another
horses
thing,
really go too, man. It's not like those big old clumpy horses, those white guys, right, man? This thing, pew! That's why they started killing them all too, because none of them could ride them. You know, they got there in their rodeo horse. I'm getting that calf, and certainly a quarter horse can jump out of the stall really fast and nail that calf. But on the open range, you know, if you got to go 25 miles for that calf, this is the horse you take, man. And that 75-foot rope instead of a 30-foot rope, and you know, you just let him drag out. You don't jerk him to the ground. You're just gentle, and then he just stands still. You know, that's why all the first American cowboys, they were riding these horses they learned from the Spaniards and the Mexicans, and that's the only horse they would use. But then the big corporations came in and got rid of them all and shot them, just thousands and thousands, millions, killed them all. Yeah. So,
Martine, you know, it's my hope that a lot of people that really love horses will read these books and listen to these conversations that you and I are having. And I want to share another short quote and then get you to maybe expand on this topic a little bit. You write, civilization's people, unconscious of the oppressive religious origins of their need to strain people and horses into color races, freezing both into single categories of status according to color, appearance, ignorantly enforces social prejudice and business culture wealth castes among both people and horses.
I think that's the truth. Well, where would you want to start, Ross?
Yeah, I think like specifically like in the horse trade.
Oh, okay.
In the horse business, because it's a bit of a tangent, but I don't know if you knew, I learned that my name, so my last name Mikichi, it means son of horseman or son of horse lord.
I thought so, man. I didn't want to bug you with it, but I thought that,
Yeah, you're right. And actually my first name in Scottish Gaelic, it's like a head of land, a Ross, but in German it means horse.
Horse, yeah. Definitely. Horse in Scandinavian, which is where the word Russia comes from, by the way. Yeah, it comes from the Hros people, who were the ones they invited in to kick the butts of the people of the Crimea in order to take the land and make it into Russia. But they were the horse people, the Hros, and so they call it Rossia. And you're a Ross, and you're a Mikichi boy. Well, I mean, horses are just amazing. The thing is that as soon as people start doing, I knew a guy, okay, I make saddles too, okay? And the saddle, why do I make saddles? I know it's going to sound like a little stretch, but I had to make saddles because there were no saddles left in North America to fit the backs of these horses. They made saddles. The saddles are not just saddles. They have to be shaped to a horse. They're all different kinds of backs and different kinds of weathers. Otherwise, you ruin them, which is another reason nobody could ride these horses, because they kept throwing these other saddles on them and hurting them. And then they would just buck. So I learned I said, well, where am I going to find? So I found the old saddles where I grew up. The guys had them there from like 1790 and 1830, these really old time things. And I took them all apart and I put them back together again with new leather. And they worked out great. And so I started doing that. But then they started reading these crazy articles. I went to a saddle maker and I said, look, can you make me a tree like this? And can you make a saddle like this? That way I don't have to make all my saddles. He says, no, this saddle doesn't fit any horses. Well, it fits my horses. But it shouldn't fit your horses. We should destroy all horses that don't fit them. So what they were saying was that we build the horse to fit the saddle that we now have the mold for, instead of building the saddle to the horse that we have. And I was like, okay, here we have the racism in a nutshell. If we're going to mold the people to look like we want them to look, according to some mores of inferiority and superiority that we have, then we're going to lose who we are. And so I said, no, this. And what happened was a lot of people got these little horses of mine, and they kept breeding them until they got backs that fit the saddles that modern saddles are, and they don't fit the old saddles. So when you get colors, it was just amazing. You go to an English horse registry like the Jockey Club, which is what thoroughbreds are registered under, the racing horse. The thoroughbred is not a purebred horse. It's just a word they developed for it. it's got all kinds of horses that were bred into there in order to get this one kind of horse. But half of them die in birth. They can hardly, they've got so many problems with their hoofs. They run pretty fast in a short clip, but they don't run 20 miles very fast. And the big old animals and poor old things. They're beautiful guys too, but they're 16, 17 hands, Columbus butts. And when you see the color, they say they only allowed this color. Chestnut bays, blacks, flea bit, blah, blah, blah. And no paints, no roans, and none of the certain color patterns that belong to horses. So the natural horse like we had, they said, oh, those are all, bad horses. Those are all the unwanted horses. Those are crossbreed horses. I said, what's crossbreed about them? They all came from the same mother. I have a mare here that has given birth to 8 foals, and there's only 2 of them have the same color. And some of them are really dark, some are really light, some have 3 colors, and some look like carnelians, and some of them look like butternut squash, all different colors. And why is that? It's because that's the natural what horses have inside them. So when people start saying, okay, for this, and the Arabs did the same thing with the Arabian horse. And when you have this religion and this type of people saying, these are our horses and our nobility rides these and our clergy rides only these, which is another thing you probably know is that clergy were not allowed to ride horses. They're only allowed to ride mules. And certain genres of people were not allowed to ride this horse and not allowed to ride that horse. And this was the horse of the gentry, and this was the horse of the not gentry. And the gentry only rode horses of these colors, and these colors, any other color showed up in the horses, they were destroyed or sold off to as horse meat. So you will have this unconscious color coding of the horses for social strata, and it's kind of like car colors. You'll have this kind of big black car for the FBI, and the big this for the that, and the horses suffer from this. Instead of describing the horse breed as whatever comes out of the horse breed, in other words, whatever is born, as being legitimate itself. But they did not. They did call and call and call until they get this and get this. And so the gene pool gets more and more limited. The things that people want get more and more effete and limited. And then the horse starts to suffer. And there's so many things like that that has to do, with caste racism, and the horses are just parallel with that. And Ross, I love your idea that I wish horse people would read and want it, but the horse people that have read it don't want it. They want to continue because there's so much mega billions of dollars in the horse situation, in the show horses and the race horses, the performance horses, that there's so much money tied up. It's just like petroleum and oil. There's nobody that wants to go with the alternative idea because it's not alternative, it's the original idea. But they're not going to, lose their economic trip in order to do anything with me. So I wrote it for more than anybody, the people who have never even looked at a horse and people who never smelled a horse and never even knew anything. I wrote it for them too,
Well, I would suggest something, and maybe this is already happening. You can tell me. Maybe for all you horse people out there, if you don't like this idea, but you want to make money, it's all about money for you. You can, just like in fashion and food, there's this slow food, slow fashion, back to the earth kind of thing going on. If you actually make it hip to get back to the old ways.
Yeah, it would be great. But a lot of people have tried that. And when they tried it, their minds are so warped by what they think a horse looks like. They can actually not see the difference between this horse and that horse. They just don't see it. They just says, looks the same to me. It's not the same. The back is like this, the withers is like this, the throat latch is like this, the forehead is like that, the temperament is like this, the fetlocks are like this, the hoofs are like this, the backs and fronts and this, that. And all of these things, they can't see it. And they think they see it. And then when they start breeding again for what they originally made the mistake with. And then we're back where we started. They did it with both. There's 3 registries with these horses now. And they've all gone to hell. And It's amazing because that's what made me say that when I did say it, is because the people's subliminal idea of what a woman should look like, or what a man should look like, what a king should look like, what a worker should look like, they're so stigmatized and have been there, and the grooves worn so deeply that the racism is really difficult to eradicate in a material way by just trying to make a physical difference in the appearance. That's why I said it's the land and the way of life and everything that makes the thing change, not the people, but the people living with the land. So the people can't make the change. The people have to become the thing that got changed by the land.
Yeah.
But it's a good thought, though. We used to think that too. 40 years ago, I thought that too, but I was very, very disappointed. But I didn't stop. So I wrote 3 books.
Yeah.
I never give up, man.
Yeah, good. Well, even if a few people, it changes something for a few people, then you've made a difference, right?
Well, I'm more interested in it changing for the horses, man, because
Mm-hmm.
for them, the joy of it is just so amazing. I've had so many horses, and old Punk, me and the barn fires and all the things we went through together. I mean, just side by side, it's just so deep for me. But at the same time, I'm blessed with that, and I would wish other people to be blessed with that as well. It's a big animal. You can't just have them in the apartment. So it's a kind of crazy thing. It's not a little cat. Yeah. I love them. Canyon Ram, man. Yeah, and you noticed how I started riding horse in the beginning. I didn't start on the back. I started underneath, man, as a little kid. Swinging from the dingling, man. I tell you, I can still remember it vivid as day, man. I was just a little tiny kid. My mother was, "Oh, what are you doing?" So funny.
Yeah.
The things you think to do.
Swinging from a horse's penis is not an image you're bound to forget too soon.
Well, it's really fun too, but I mean, I don't really prescribe it. I mean, you got to be only 3 feet tall to pull it off, and most horses wouldn't go for it. I don't know why that horse did, but God bless him, he didn't kill me. Poor old Yampa, man, he would have killed me for sure if I tried that. Yeah, horses make you nuts, man. They make you into wild, but they make you so adventurous and so open-hearted, and brave. And we're lacking courage tonight because, we need peace in this world, and peace does not come from cowardice. Peace comes from courage. Wars come from cowardice. Peace doesn't come from cowardice. Comes only from courage. And the horses what gave me the little courage I have. So, yeah. I'm looking at Yampa's kids looking at me right now in the window here. And one of Punk's babies too. The one that was born in a plum tree.
Ah, yeah.
She's looking at me right now. She said, "What are you doing talking over there? Come over here and give me some hay, man. Give me a food."
Mm-hmm.
She's looking at me right now. That's a beautiful little horse. Tosape.
Martine, I don't know how much time we've got. We've been talking for almost an hour and 15 minutes. I don't want to take more of your time than you've got to give.
Oh, I'm fine, man. Whatever you want.
Okay.
The last book here.
Yeah. Well, in chapter 17, Mohino.
Oh, Mohino. He's looking at me too. He's right over there.
Is he?
Yeah. He's right over there. He's right under the cottonwood down there. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Bubba.
In that chapter, you talk about his ability to spot people with bad intention or darkness in their heart, and you're building the hall, your teaching hall for Balad's Kitchen.
Really?
The lady.
Mm-hmm.
And you had this rule there that there shouldn't be any negativity, that anyone working there, helping with the build, should do so with a good heart.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that a bit, because this kind of love for our work and putting only good intentions into it it's often, and I include myself in this, very difficult for modern people in the work world. There's a lot of bitterness and resistance and resentment that we've got to work,
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. The lack, the people don't love their work anymore. It's like the idea is to just have a fortress home and kick back and take drugs and party and then get depressed and take some more drugs for that. And I don't know. People used to love. I mean, did you ever read any of those old accounts of the East Coast of America, what's now America, when they're talking about Native Americans, the different Haudenosaunee or Lenapes or Narragansetts, and they would make fun of them because they would say, well, the women go out in the fields, and they sing and they just love to go to work, and they work and work and work like slaves because the men make them. The men didn't make them. Men, if you try to interrupt them, they kill the men. The men were off doing their hunting and doing whatever they had to do. But the people have always loved their work and loved being alive doing their work. And people all of a sudden decided that it comes from being a serf. It comes from being a person that's forced to work, a person being a slave or whatever it is, or in the industry, where they keep you drunk and then just feed you enough money in order to keep you in debt. And so you just hate working. But people who have their own land and their own ways and their own freedom, they love their work and they're proud of their work, and all that sort of thing. So even when I was making my little hall, which is not so little, I'm looking at that too right now. Mohino's right next to it. It's on the other side. And I made it in a style that, well, I didn't make it. I mean, I designed it, and I worked a little bit on it, a very small amount. All these people, beautiful people, just pitch in, and I hired many workers who did a beautiful job. And I did it in a way that was actually against the law, because the building codes are made to such buildings like this can't be built anymore. But we built it anyway, and we got around it by cooking big feasts for the building inspectors. So when they would come, there would always be something coming out of the horno, roast kid and all this bread and everything. And they would sit down and eat, and they would just sign us off. They wouldn't even look at it. It was Hannah's way to get to their heart, But this people that would work, once in a while, be people just doing a job, to make some money. And that's all right, I mean, you got to work, you feed your family or yourself. But there would be people with malicious heart, and then there would be people who have enemies. And I've always had enemies, and I have more now than ever. But Mohino, man, he was a little stumble, but he was just amazing. I ride him, and he's really tiny. He's a really small horse. He's like 13.2, 13.3. But he looks really big from a distance. But once you get on him, you realize everybody says, "Oh, well, he's pretty short." And you ride right into the buildings. And he was really good at riding. You can ride right into your kitchen, anywhere you could ride. You get on stage and all that. But when they're building, just ride up behind. And he would just go behind every person. At first I didn't know what he was doing. And then I just give him the rein, just let him walk. Saws going, and rotary tools and chainsaws and earth tampers and all kinds of racket going on. And he would totally, which if you know horses, that's very unlikely they would remain calm and all that noise and disturbance, because they're very sensitive ears and they're scared, very easily scared. But not him, man. He'd walk along. If he saw somebody that was like sad or down, he would go over there and just stand there. Just put his nose there. And I would get down or not get down. And I would ask the person if everything was okay. And I'd find out what's going on. And we'd have a little talk, and that would make everything better. But once in a while, you'd find somebody who was, not so nice and a little bit mean-hearted. And the guy would go after me. And sometimes they even go after the horse, And he would always find them. And that way I would take him and say, let's go take a walk and let's talk about this and what it is, and we'll get it straightened out. And then if we can keep you on, we will. And if we can't, we'll just pay you severance pay, and then you have to go, because I can't have no bad vibe in this building, man. And that's what happened. I mean, he's the one that cleared it, because he could tell. And as a result, there are people that still come to this building just to sit in a certain part of it and to heal a part of their body. They're just like, oh no, this part right here by this pilaster, that makes the little old ladies, they like to sit there, So it's good for my hip. And I said, okay, yeah, because it's got a good vibe in there. So he was just amazing. I mean, I've met a lot of horses that could do a lot of things. I mean, they were amazing, but most people don't see that as a talent. They want them to be able to jump, styles and fences and to run races and do all these things, which is great too, but there's a lot of little talents out there with people too, not just horses. And if you like I had a horse that could jump anything, and everybody was trying to train this horse to stay in the crowd. I said, I don't think that's what we should do. We should just let her jump, man. She wants to jump. Let's have a jumping horse, And whatever they do best, that's what they should do. And so what Mohino did best is make prayers with me. And what he did best was discern when something was dangerous or something was blessed or somebody was hurting. And he was not like, I mean, I've had some tremendous rides with these horses, but he was not that, he was a little bit of a, stumbly guy and all that, kind of a prophet horse, man. He was weird, and he still is. But he was able and is able to discern one person from the other. And this was just a tremendous, tremendous thing for people to see, for one thing. And to realize that, it's not just people, man. It's animals. Everything knows. And animals more than anyone. So he was great, And he also loved being really estrenado. He liked to be dressed up, man. If I put a scum-sucking saddle on him and, just a regular old white man bridle, he'd look at me like, he's going to kill me. He wouldn't let me get on. So I had to put his silver, and I had to have silver this and his silver that and then do this and a nice bit, And then I could get on because he wanted to look good, man. He looked good. And all the horses I've ever rode, all wanted to look good. Blue was the worst of the bunch. And Punk wasn't any better. Yeah, they all had their fancy outfits, man. So it's something about the nobility of soul. With the nomad comes from Central Asia and from the central plains of the North America. And just that nobility of soul, male, female, whatever kind, cross-gender, every kind, just the beauty of it. And the horse is there with it. But what ends up being, the beauty of it and, an eventing Olympic thing and all of these rich people with their picket fences and the horses that they use, the horse itself ends up being the jewelry instead of the horse being the command of the beauty. And so the horse is the heart instead of it being like, oh, I've got another Lamborghini, I've got another Jaguar, and now I've got this horse. It's affectation. For me, that's, not a happy thing. What we're talking about here is something that's on the earth, not that stuff. So I just want to make sure nobody got that confused. I don't think anybody would, but just in case.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Martine, I think I have two more questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
This might seem like a tangent, but it is something you touch on throughout this series of books. And I don't know if this is a good forum to discuss something like this. It's something I normally don't talk about unless in a public setting, because a lot of people think it's weird or feel uncomfortable about it. But that's to do with the psychic realm, witchcraft and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's a part of living reality that most of us modern people don't really acknowledge or understand because we've become really desensitized. But it impacts our health and vitality, as you know.
Sure.
I myself have experienced causing harm to others with unconscious kind of negative thoughts, and I've experienced harm caused to myself by that.
Sure.
And I know that there are people who deliberately can cause harm with different ritual or thought forms to others.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can just speak a little bit about how we protect ourselves, how we can clear this kind of realm to bring ourselves back into health.
Okay, this is a pretty big subject.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine. But first of all, let's try to realize that any type of, we call that sort of witchcraft, sorcery. Mm-hmm. Any kind of stuff where you're trying to manipulate phenomena with ritual or any sort of thing, that's technology, okay? Mm-hmm. Native people where I come from, they don't think of that as magic. They think of that as technology. When you, as like technology, always trying to manipulate phenomena and nature in order to get what it wants, whether that's a negative thing or gain or get this for that. It's always to use nature without its permission in order to get what you want. And there's always a price for that. It's terrible. And so the best way to deal with that sort of thing coming in on you is not paranoia, is, I mean, you could go the Buddhist way, you know, where you just think good thoughts and go for the best and you're working your karma out. But then there's, you know, other ways. And one is to make sure that you're not doing the same thing, you know, and because it takes a receptor, you have to be receptive to the witchcraft for it to have any effect upon you. The only people that can have been able to hurt me are people that I've blessed. And the rest have had a hard time doing it. Have you ever read or heard the teachers from West Africa of Sundiata?
No.
The Sunyata Fasa? It's an amazing African epic. But there's one point where the lame king, who's the hero of the book, is being witched by his half brother's mother because she wants to get rid of him so his brother can be king. So she hires 7 witches from a neighboring tribe to do him up. And they're having this council, you know, and this lady who wants to kill Sundiata is saying, now I want you to do this, to do this, to do this, and I'll give you this much grain and this much money and this much gold and this thing and that. And they say, well, that's a fine, but we can't really hurt this man at all unless we hate him. You know, our power, we got a lot of power, but we don't hate him, you know, we don't know him, you know, we've never met him. So can you figure out a way for us to hate him? So that, you know, and he hates us, and then we can get him. So she said, well, the best way is to go into his magic plant garden where he's got all his herbs and he makes the herbs for his mother was a magical being, which is another part of the story, but she's actually a water buffalo. And so Sundiata is coming back from hunting gazelles, you know, which he was very good at. And he never ate the meat. He always gave the gazelle to the musicians to make chorus, you know, to make these instruments. And he's coming back and he sees his garden, you know, and he sees all these ladies in there, you know, smashing down the herbs. And he goes in, he says, oh, ladies, you need this? Oh, and then he goes around and picks all these plants. You need this kind? And do you need this kind? Take as much of this as you want. Oh, and get this one over here. Oh, don't you want some of that kind over there? And don't you want this? And all these really, really rare plants for cooking and for medicinal purposes. And he just loads them up and almost denudes the whole garden, his own garden himself. He says, there you go. And if you need any more, you don't even have to ask. Just come in and get it whenever you want. And then the head of all these witches comes up to him and says, you know, Sundiata, you're unconquerable. There is no way we can beat you. And so they join up with him and they become his friend. And no one could take him out. And that's probably one of my biggest advice is feed. Make beauty, make beauty, make beauty. Paranoia only makes more witchcraft. Sure, we all have methods. Sure, we have our magic. Sure, we have this, we have that. But that ends up being actually just falling into modern technology by using so-called native methods. Best thing to do is to become stronger, make better, and heal the enemy. Heal the enemy. Instead of running from the enemy, hiding from the enemy, and shielding up from the enemy. Make sure you're not penetrable by being generous, being big, and being beautiful. And just like that old Zen story says, you know, you remember that one where the samurais come into the village and the Zen monk, you know, he's always cooking his rice and all these stories, you know, and he didn't flee because his rice wasn't done yet. And so he's still sitting there cooking his rice, and these thousands of soldiers are killing everybody and burning all the houses. The rest of the people have gone. And the samurai king goes, the shogun, he goes in there and he says, hey, you monk, what are you doing? Stand at attention when I come in, you know, bow. He says, but my rice isn't done. I'm cooking my rice. I'll burn if I don't pay attention. To hell with your rice, you know. Do you realize I could cut your head off? So yeah, I realize you could cut my head off, but do you realize that I could die smiling and you can't? And the guy says, okay. And so the guy puts his sword back into his sheath, and then the monk says, I see you are very learned, because that's the first step to heaven. You already know half of it. And so, of course, the samurai becomes one of his students. And that's basically where it's at. You know, you don't want to protect yourself. You want to feed what's hurting, because anything that's vicious and trying to kill somebody is sick. And if they're sick and you have the courage to do it, you heal them. And if you don't have the courage to do it, at least understand that that's what's going on, and make sure you're not another person. Because usually when you armor up with spiritual stuff or any of that sort of thing, your armor is only deflection, and deflection is not protection, as my kid says. What is sometimes an emergency situation? Okay, yeah, if somebody's shooting bullet at you, you got to do what you got to do. But in most cases, it's not. It's not. And in any case, to be able to live without that constant, paranoid gunslinger kind of mentality that so-and-so's killing me with their thoughts, the best thing to do is make so much beauty that you've got plenty left over. They can eat some of it. And as they eat the beauty, they change. They're transformed by it. And if they are, good. And if they're not, you're not any worse for the wear, because you just learn how to make better and more beauty, which is why I write so many damn books. I know that's a little bit shorter version than you wanted, but there are other things. But, just generally for the people. That's what I have to say.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You bet.
Final, I guess, question or topic that I'm interested in, and I'm curious at the end to hear if there's anything else you want to say, but is in chapter 15, which is titled "The Youth of Old Horses and the Purple Flowered Road of the Autumn Sun."
Yeah, I'm looking right at it, man. It's right there.
You write about something I'm really interested in, which is our ways of aging and how our society treats our elders. And you say the following: to stay healthy and to continue layering beauty into one's overall presence, horses, just like people, have to be useful to something they love and believe in at any age.
Right.
In the latter phases of their lives, horses and people don't need to feel useful, for that's a horrible insult. Old horses and people have to be indispensable and useful to something they believe in that believes in them.
Right.
It takes a lot of spark and energy to be old in a way that feeds life. In New Mexico, people are fond of saying, you need to be young enough to be this old.
That's true. That's what they say. It takes a lot of youth to be this old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't know where to begin, but at some point, when everything is based on a monetized society, little children and people with white hair are not making anybody any money. And so they have their children with very bad instruments, very bad tools, very bad clothing, very bad everything, because they said it's dispensable and they're not going to be able to make it to give it back. The old people are, just shuffled off into all of these sort of placebo positions on placebo places as senile. But the problem is once you have 5 or 6 generations where you don't really actually have any old people, there's very, very few elderly people who are really the ones. And the villages where I grew up, the elderly people are the ones that knew stuff. They were not the people who were forgetful, because their memories was what everybody was relying on, and how to get stuff done and how to do it and how the ritual went. And so you always went to all these the big councils of old people, and that's what they did. They would even complain about how much work they had to do, because they were constantly this and constantly that. And what about this? What happened back in 1920 when you guys did this? How did this work out? Blah, 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 blah. And they're not only useful, but they're indispensable to the function of the society as a whole. And the extreme youth, in other words, the babies, and the extreme old, in other words, the grandma, grandpas, in the Mayan language, for instance, they have the same name. They don't call, to call somebody a grandparent, it could also mean grandchild. And it's the same word because they're considered to be replacements of each other. And so they always sit, you're not even allowed to go to a council meeting unless you've got a baby sitting on your knee. You can't talk because that means you don't know shit. Because if you're not willing to raise a child or a grandchild, then means what your talk is fine. We're going to listen to you someday, but not now because this is important stuff. So the old people, they really grew into the various initiations into their oldness. But when you get a technology where this generation no longer knows what the next generation knows, and this generation all of a sudden is, tech savvy with this and this and this and this and this, then you have people in charge with money who are getting older, and they say, I'm going to keep my this, and everybody all of a sudden becomes these weird age tribes, and so they even call them, Gen Zs and baby boomers and millennials and all that. But when you get a society where the people have to be shuffled off, you all of these octogenarians, are just all of a sudden doddering fools. And the little kids are just these slobbering idiots who don't know anything. People are asking me, how come your kids know how to do all these things? I said, they're part of my family, man. Just like my animals, just like me. And we're all necessary to be here, but nobody's patronized for being whatever age they are. They're necessary. So, I mean, that is a really hard problem, what we have right now, because it's all based on economics. But pretty soon, those foundations are going to erode, and the whole thing's going to come tumbling down, and people are going to need somebody that knows something. So, hang on to your white hair, man, because if you know something, you're going to be needed. And yeah, and it's the same with animals. I mean, they are, they all have all these people who raise horses. To get back to the horse thing, they have a foal, and when they're 3 months old, they take them away from their mother and they start feeding them on this fake food. They put the mother up to go breed again. The baby is sent off to this place. Actually, horses need 5 years with their mother to learn how to be horses. If the mother is tame and has been ridden, that horse is automatically broke. You don't have to do anything, man. You just get on and ride. There's a few little details, but if not, you got a mess, and you got to force this, and you got click training, and everything becomes conditioning, and it just becomes very, very mechanical. And the people are mechanical, and the animals are mechanical. So I think what I was trying to say in that is that when at every stage, people need one another if you got a real culture. If you don't have a real culture, well, then you got what you got now. But that can't go very far, because after a while, the Pleistocene blood and soul and body starts to atrophy. And you don't have that great, delicious togetherness that you have with a multi-age tribal people. And you look at Tuaregs, man, you see their old guys riding in on those camels, and plop down with their big old hats, and sitting there in their bright silk, gowns, and really, really old duffers, and these old ladies, and all these young warriors and all these young girls and everybody's there, man. It's just, and it's, that's the way it should be, man. That's the way it should be. But people, they lost the plot of what it means to be a human being, and they got into this very strange place. They think it's comfort, and what they got is really happy. They've never felt happiness. So it's a troubled thing. It's a very troubled thing. But we do have it within our power to maybe make something differently, but it's got to not be patronizing, like I said in there. Have to have a real use. And I tell you, everybody has a use if you can keep life at a level that's basically on the ground. Okay, if you're going to be Elon Musk and grow potatoes on Mars and fly around in a Star Wars thing, well, I bet you we'd need a few more Obi-Wan Kenobis. Yeah.
Well, Martine, I want to ask you, first of all, thank you so much. This is the fourth interview that you and I have had, this
Yeah,
fourth conversation over a number of years.
always
And
a joy.
yeah, and I really, really, I feel very lucky to have been able to have these conversations with you. It's been a real privilege for me. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, hopefully we have more in the future, man. I'm probably done writing the horse books, but I got a few other things up my sleeve. So see what happens.
I'd love that. I'd love that. And I really hope that one day I actually get to come down and visit you at Ballad's Kitchen there and spend
Yeah,
a bit of time in person.
that'd be fantastic. But don't hold your breath, man, because you may see me and start running for life. A lot of people say, one foot out the door. Oh my God, he's weirder than I thought. He clanks. He's got so much silver on him. Jesus Christ, man, with a lightning conductor, man. This guy's short. I thought he was tall. He's got only this many teeth, and he's really strange. What the hell, The wind blows hard here. No, I'm not really a monster, but I guess some people do think that.
Yeah, I guess we all have our projections of what a person should be like, and then when they don't fulfill that, we want to pull them down.
I never fulfill anybody's projections of what they think I'm like, ever. I used to be really, really bad, man. My wife hates it when I do these things, but I would go into like the Harvard Divinity School where I was supposed to, do a lecture or something if I was on the road, and I would sit in the front row, where the speaker was supposed to sit. I'd come in early, and then invariably somebody would get up and say, "Sir, this has been reserved for the speaker." And have you paid? No. And I would, okay, so you have to leave. I said, okay, so I leave. And then, of course, when the guy comes looking for me out front, and I tell him that was asked to leave because they didn't like the look of me. And then he comes up, and then I go on the backstage, and then they get up there and they introduce me, and everybody goes pale. I was like, uh-oh, it's him. I just love doing that shit. But that's very naughty. I shouldn't do that. And even in Bullet's Kitchen, sometimes we have a new class, I'll be out there on the tractor, because we have everybody park. I move a few corrals, and I move the manure away from where the corrals, and I just park in the middle of our plaza here, where all the animals are, right? And they're not too close to the horses because they'll chew all the paint off their cars. But then, I was doing that one time. I was, driving the tractor and getting everything ready. And there's a couple of ladies who are, the super shamans, with their little bag on the side and their little T-shirt says shaman and all that. And then, well, that's fine, And I guess they'd signed up for Bullet's Kitchen. And I was driving the tractor, and one of them started swearing at me, for raising the dust. And I said, "Oh, that's all right. You can just go over there and go on. Don't tell me what." And start giving me all kinds of help because I, of course, was a lower caste and I was a worker, and she was going to boss me around. So I thought, I can be bossed around, So I just went around my business. And then later that night, when I was in my silks, my Turkmen, smock, and all my metal and all my belts, and they ran away. They would come back because instead of saying, "Oh, the joke's on us, I'm so sorry," they went, "Ha, what a mean man to make us feel small." And there's your shame and your superiority. So I don't do that anymore, But I used to kind of get a kick out of it because, people want me to look a certain way instead of listening to the heart of what's being said, man. And it's the same with them, If I see some very suburban person who's probably signed my death warrant, I say, no, patience. Let's feed them. Let's give them gifts. Let's somehow heal this thing and make it good. Because we've had enough colonial death. And if we don't heal the oppressor, then we're going to continue to be oppressed, and we shall become the oppressors. So, sorry I'm preaching so much, but, it's a prerogative of old age, man.
I hope you keep doing it for many more years.
God give us all life, you too. Is your buddy still back there running the knobs?
Jacob Steele. Yeah, he's not here with me today, but yeah, he's doing a lot of stuff, and he and I have started our own independent podcast where we both speak with our guests, and then he and I have our own little conversations after and that kind of thing. So
all right,
yeah.
Is that looking?
I will, and please give my best to your wife Hannah and your kids and Jake and Marianne, who I was corresponding with by email.
You bet. Yeah, I will. Yeah, Jake don't work for me anymore. He's got 3 kids now, and he's trying to do a woodworking thing. But he just lives about a mile down the road from us, so I'll see him. He's a good guy. Yeah, you betcha. And my oldest kid, man, is in high school now, and it's a real trip, man. I tell you, she's a musician. And Gobi's looking at me through the window, so I got to go. I guess. All right. Be well, man. All blessings on everybody.
Thank you, Martin.
All right. Hasta cuando.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyen Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. The show is edited by Abdo Habani. And I'm your host, Ross McKeechee. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyen Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyen.com.